Have you ever felt that something was waiting for you, something with your name on it, something hidden behind years of confusion, delays, disappointments, and unanswered questions? Tonight's message begins with a mystery. Not a small mystery. A life-changing one. Because somewhere in the story you're about to hear, there is a property. An address. A door. And a discovery so unexpected that most people would dismiss it immediately. But don't leave. Don't skip. Because the final piece of this story changes everything. Imagine receiving a photograph from an unknown sender. No explanation. No greeting. No warning. Just a picture. At first glance, it looks ordinary. A house. A pathway. A gate. A mailbox. Nothing unusual. But then you notice something strange. The image feels familiar. Not because you've seen it before. But because something inside you recognizes it. As if your spirit remembers what your mind has forgotten. You zoom in. Your heart begins beating faster. The mailbox contains a name. The gate contains a symbol. And suddenly the impossible question enters your mind. Why does this place feel connected to me? Most people would ignore the feeling. Most people would delete the photo. Most people would convince themselves that it's meaningless. But what if the greatest opportunities of your life have always arrived disguised as ordinary moments? What if the answers you've been seeking have never been hiding from you? What if you've simply been looking in the wrong direction? There was once a man who spent years believing he owned nothing. He worked. He struggled. He survived. Every morning looked the same. Every month looked the same. Every year felt like a repetition of the last. He believed life had forgotten him. He believed success belonged to other people. He believed that extraordinary things happened only to the lucky. Then one day, a single letter arrived. No one knew where it came from. No one understood why it was delivered. Inside was one sentence. Something that belongs to you has been waiting. That's all. No explanation. No details. No address. No instructions. Just those words. At first he laughed. Then he ignored it. Days passed. Weeks passed. Yet the sentence continued echoing in his mind. Something that belongs to you has been waiting. Eventually curiosity became stronger than doubt. And curiosity changed everything. Because sometimes the greatest treasures aren't things you discover. They're things that have been waiting to discover you. Think about that. How many opportunities have passed through your life unnoticed? How many open doors looked ordinary? How many blessings arrived wearing the disguise of coincidence? What if the next chapter of your life doesn't begin with effort? What if it begins with recognition? Recognition that something valuable has been yours all along. The story continues. The man began investigating. The clues seemed random. An old record. A forgotten document. A distant connection. None of it made sense. Yet every clue pointed toward one location. One property. One address. The closer he came to the truth, the more unbelievable everything became. Because the address wasn't somewhere he expected. It wasn't nearby. It wasn't connected to his daily life. It wasn't connected to his plans. And that's when he learned one of life's greatest lessons. The biggest surprises rarely come from places you're already watching. They come from directions you've completely ignored. Imagine standing in front of a gate. A gate you've never seen before. A gate connected to a place you've never visited. Yet somehow your heart knows you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The air feels different. The silence feels different. Even time feels different. And then someone hands you a photograph. The same photograph that started everything. Except now you're standing inside it. The house from the picture is real. The pathway is real. The gate is real. And suddenly the impossible becomes possible. The man looked around in disbelief. Years of struggle. Years of waiting. Years of wondering whether his life would ever change. And now he was standing at the edge of a revelation that would rewrite his future. But here's where the story becomes truly powerful. The property itself wasn't the greatest discovery. The greatest discovery was what it represented. Proof. Proof that life had not forgotten him. Proof that his journey had meaning. Proof that unseen chapters were still waiting to unfold. Many people spend their lives believing that nothing extraordinary is coming. They expect disappointment. They prepare for failure. They train themselves to expect less. But what happens when reality suddenly refuses to follow those expectations? What happens when something arrives that is bigger than your doubts? Bigger than your fears? Bigger than the story you've been telling yourself? Everything changes. Because the moment you realize possibility still exists, your entire future shifts. The man entered the property. Every room seemed to hold a secret. Every hallway seemed connected to a story. Every corner seemed to whisper that the past was not what he thought. And then he found something unexpected. Another photograph. Older. Faded. Hidden away. When he turned it over, he discovered a message. A message that would stay with him forever. It said, "The inheritance was never the building. The inheritance was the belief that you were meant for more." Read that again. The inheritance was never the building. The inheritance was the belief that you were meant for more. Because the truth is that many people are living far below their potential. Not because they lack talent. Not because they lack opportunity. But because they stopped expecting miracles. They stopped believing surprises could happen. They stopped imagining that life might still contain extraordinary chapters. And that is why this story matters. Because somewhere right now, someone listening has been waiting. Waiting for change. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for a sign that their best days have not passed. This message is for that person. Maybe you felt forgotten. Maybe you felt overlooked. Maybe you've wondered whether anything remarkable is ahead. But what if your story is closer to a breakthrough than you realize? What if the address you've been searching for isn't just a location? What if it's a destination in your life? A destination where disappointment ends and possibility begins. The man eventually understood something profound. The secret property did not change his life because of its value. It changed his life because it shattered his limitations. Before that day, he believed the future would resemble the past. After that day, he realized the future could become something entirely different. And that realization became worth more than anything money could buy. So tonight, remember this. Not every photograph is just a photograph. Not every door is just a door. Not every coincidence is just a coincidence. Sometimes life places clues in front of you. Sometimes opportunities arrive quietly. Sometimes the greatest chapter begins with a mystery. And sometimes the thing you've been waiting for has been moving toward you this entire time. Perhaps that's why you're hearing this story right now. Perhaps that's why these words found you. Because somewhere ahead is a discovery. A revelation. A turning point. And when it arrives, you'll look back at this moment and realize something astonishing. The secret property was never only about land. Never only about a house. Never only about an address. It was about discovering that your future contains more possibility than your fears have allowed you to see. And when that realization finally reaches you, the address that shocks you most won't be written on a mailbox. It will be the destination of the person you are becoming. A destination you never expected. A destination you never imagined. A destination that has been waiting for you all along. The story did not end at the gate. In fact, that was only the beginning. Because after the man stepped onto the property, something happened that no one could explain. The strange feeling he had experienced since receiving the photograph grew stronger. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement. It was something deeper. Something impossible to describe. As if every step forward was bringing him closer to a truth he had forgotten long ago. He stood silently in the center of the property. The wind moved through the trees. The afternoon sun stretched across the ground. Everything seemed normal. Yet nothing felt ordinary. Then he noticed something unusual. A narrow path leading behind the main building. The path wasn't visible in the photograph. In fact, it looked as though someone had intentionally hidden it. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have stayed near the house. But curiosity has a strange power. It pulls people toward discoveries they never expected. Slowly, he followed the path. Step by step. The farther he walked, the quieter everything became. Even the sounds of the world seemed distant. And then he saw it. A smaller structure standing alone among the trees. Old. Weathered. Forgotten. At least that's how it appeared from a distance. But as he moved closer, he realized something shocking. The building wasn't abandoned. Someone had been there recently. The door showed signs of use. The ground contained fresh footprints. And suddenly a question entered his mind. Who else knows about this place? His heart began racing. The property had already been a mystery. Now the mystery was becoming even deeper. He approached carefully. The door was slightly open. Inside was a single room. Nothing luxurious. Nothing valuable. Nothing that appeared important. Except for one thing. A large wooden table standing in the center. And resting on that table was a collection of photographs. Dozens of them. Perhaps hundreds. He picked one up. Then another. Then another. What he saw made him freeze. Every photograph showed the property. But each image had been taken during a different period in time. Years apart. Decades apart. Different seasons. Different weather. Different generations. And somehow, every photograph seemed connected. As though they were telling a story. A story no one had fully understood. Then he found the photograph. The exact photograph that had been sent to him. The same image. The same angle. The same house. The same gate. But there was one difference. A detail he had never noticed before. Standing near a window was a shadow. Not a clear person. Not a recognizable face. Just a figure. Watching. Waiting. The discovery sent chills through him. Because now he knew something important. The photograph had not been random. Someone had chosen it. Someone had wanted him to see it. And someone had known exactly what they were doing. But why? Why send the image? Why lead him here? Why reveal the property now? Questions flooded his mind. Yet answers remained hidden. Many people reach moments like this in life. Moments when the puzzle becomes bigger. Moments when curiosity becomes impossible to ignore. Moments when turning back is no longer an option. Because once you've seen enough of the truth, you cannot return to ignorance. The man understood that. So he continued searching. Hours passed. He examined every photograph. Every note. Every clue. And then he discovered something folded between two pictures. An envelope. Yellowed by age. Untouched for years. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single page. The words were handwritten. Simple. Direct. Powerful. It read, "If you are reading this, you have finally arrived where you were always meant to be." He stared at the message. Again and again. If you are reading this, you have finally arrived where you were always meant to be. The sentence felt impossible. How could someone have known? How could someone have predicted this moment? How could this letter have been waiting all these years? Yet there it was. Proof that the mystery stretched far beyond the property itself. The message continued. Many people will see this place and notice only walls. Many people will see this land and notice only value. But a few will understand its true purpose. This place exists to remind you that your journey was never random. The man sat down. For the first time since receiving the photograph, he felt completely still. Not because all the answers had arrived. But because he finally understood something. The mystery wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about wealth. It wasn't about a hidden fortune. It was about purpose. Purpose changes everything. Without purpose, people wander. Without purpose, opportunities feel meaningless. Without purpose, even success can feel empty. But once purpose enters the picture, ordinary moments become extraordinary. Suddenly every challenge has meaning. Every delay has meaning. Every unexpected turn has meaning. The property had become a symbol of that truth. A reminder that life often prepares answers long before we discover the questions. As evening approached, the man walked outside again. The sky was changing colors. Orange. Gold. Purple. The entire landscape seemed transformed. And that's when he noticed another detail. Near the edge of the property stood a stone marker. Small. Easy to miss. Covered by years of growth. He brushed away the dirt. Then he read the inscription. The words nearly took his breath away. Everything arrives at the moment it is ready to be received. He repeated the sentence silently. Everything arrives at the moment it is ready to be received. How many times had he wanted answers before he was ready? How many times had he demanded clarity before he possessed the wisdom to understand it? How many times had he mistaken delay for denial? The truth suddenly became clear. Sometimes waiting isn't punishment. Sometimes waiting is preparation. Preparation for a moment that would otherwise be wasted. Preparation for an opportunity that would otherwise be ignored. Preparation for a revelation that would otherwise be misunderstood. And perhaps that's true for you as well. Perhaps there are things you've wanted for years. Things you've prayed for. Worked for. Hoped for. Yet they haven't arrived. Maybe the reason isn't because they are impossible. Maybe the reason is because the story isn't finished yet. The man remained at the property until darkness fell. The stars appeared overhead. The air became cool. Everything seemed peaceful. Yet deep inside, he knew another discovery was waiting. Because mysteries rarely reveal themselves all at once. They reveal themselves layer by layer. Piece by piece. Truth by truth. And somewhere beyond the darkness, another clue was waiting to be found. A clue connected to the photographs. Connected to the property. Connected to the hidden message. A clue that would reveal why this place had remained secret for so many years. A clue that would explain why the photograph had found him. A clue that would change everything once again. And as he looked toward the distant horizon, one thought echoed through his mind. The greatest secret had not been uncovered yet. Not even close. And what he was about to discover next would be more shocking than the property itself. The night was silent. Not the ordinary kind of silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. The kind that makes you feel as though the world itself is holding its breath. The man stood near the stone marker, unable to stop thinking about the message. Everything arrives at the moment it is ready to be received. Those words refused to leave his mind. Hours had passed since he discovered them. Yet something deep inside him kept saying the story was not over. The property still held secrets. The photographs still held answers. And somewhere within those answers was the reason this entire journey had begun. The moon climbed higher. Shadows stretched across the land. The house stood quietly in the darkness. Then something unexpected happened. A light appeared. For a moment he thought he imagined it. But there it was. A faint glow coming from one of the upstairs windows. His heart began pounding. That room had been empty. He had checked every room himself. No electricity. No people. No movement. Yet now a soft light flickered behind the glass. The logical part of his mind searched for explanations. But curiosity was stronger. Slowly he walked back toward the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. The closer he came, the brighter the light became. When he finally entered the building, he realized something shocking. The light wasn't coming from a lamp. It wasn't coming from a bulb. It was coming from a room he had somehow overlooked. A room hidden behind a wall panel. A room that wasn't visible from the hallway. His pulse raced. Who built this? Why hide it? And what was inside? Carefully he pushed the panel aside. The hidden room was small. Dust covered most surfaces. Yet one object stood untouched in the center. A wooden chest. Old. Locked. Waiting. The sight of it sent a strange feeling through him. Not because it looked valuable, but because it felt important. As though everything that had happened so far had been leading to this moment. The photographs. The letters. The mysterious property. The hidden pathway. The stone marker. Everything. His hands trembled as he approached. Attached to the chest was a small metal plate. Engraved on it were 7 words. The final answer is never what you expect. He stared at the message. Again. And again. Because somehow those words felt personal. How many times had life surprised him? How many times had reality turned out differently than he imagined? Perhaps the greatest discoveries always arrive wearing unfamiliar faces. After several minutes, he found the key. It had been hidden beneath the chest itself. Almost as though someone wanted the box to be opened. But only by someone willing to search. The lock clicked. The lid slowly opened. Inside was not gold. Not money. Not jewelry. Nothing most people would expect. Instead, there was a stack of documents. A journal. And a photograph unlike any he had seen before. The photograph immediately caught his attention. It showed the property many years ago. But this time people were standing in front of it. Families. Children. Friends. Smiling faces. A thriving community. A place filled with life. The property had not always been empty. It had once been full of dreams. Full of stories. Full of purpose. As he turned the photograph over, he found a handwritten sentence. Ownership changes. Purpose remains. The words hit him harder than anything else he had discovered. Ownership changes. Purpose remains. Suddenly he understood. The property was never important because of who possessed it. The property was important because of what it represented. Generation after generation had come and gone. Lives had changed. Names had changed. Circumstances had changed. Yet the deeper purpose remained untouched. That realization changed everything. Many people spend years chasing possessions. More money. More status. More recognition. Believing those things will finally make them feel complete. Yet the truth is often different. The things we own rarely define us. The purpose we live for does. The man opened the journal. Page after page told the story of people who had passed through the property. People who arrived feeling lost. People who arrived feeling forgotten. People who arrived carrying disappointment. And almost every entry ended the same way. They left with hope. Not because the property gave them something, but because the property helped them remember something. Their value. Their potential. Their purpose. One entry stood out above all others. The handwriting was older. The ink faded. Yet the message remained clear. It said, "The greatest inheritance is not land. The greatest inheritance is belief." The moment a person believes their future can be greater than their past, everything changes. The man read the sentence 3 times. Then 5. Then 10. Because deep inside he knew it was true. His entire life had changed the moment he stopped believing his story was finished. The property hadn't created that transformation. The property had revealed it. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle appeared. Folded between 2 pages of the journal was a sealed note. Unlike everything else, this note contained a name. His name. The sight of it made his breath catch. For several seconds he simply stared. Unable to move. Unable to think. Unable to understand how this was possible. Eventually he opened it. Inside was a message. A message written long before he ever arrived. The note read, "If you have reached this point, then you have already discovered the truth. You believed you were searching for a property. You believed you were searching for an address. You believed you were searching for a hidden inheritance. But none of those were the real treasure. The real treasure was discovering who you are capable of becoming. The address was never the destination. You were." The room became completely silent. No fear. No confusion. No uncertainty. Only clarity. Because in that moment he finally understood everything. The photograph had not been sent to give him a building. The photograph had been sent to awaken possibility. The property had not been waiting to be claimed. It had been waiting to teach. The address had not been pointing toward a location. It had been pointing toward a transformation. And suddenly all the pieces fit together. Every challenge. Every setback. Every disappointment. Every unanswered question. Every delay. Each one had played a role. Not in holding him back, but in preparing him. Preparing him to recognize the opportunity when it finally arrived. Outside, dawn began to appear. The darkness slowly faded. Light spread across the horizon. For the first time since receiving the mysterious photograph, he felt complete peace. Not because he possessed answers to every question, but because he no longer needed them. The greatest mystery had already been solved. He had discovered that the future was bigger than his fears. Bigger than his doubts. Bigger than the limits he once placed upon himself. As he stepped outside and looked across the property one final time, the sunrise illuminated everything. The house. The trees. The pathways. The gate. The place looked different now. Not because it had changed, Because he had. And that is often how the greatest revelations work. The world remains the same. But the person seeing it becomes someone new. So if you're hearing this right now, remember this truth. Life may still contain surprises you cannot imagine. Opportunities you cannot predict. Doors you cannot yet see. Photographs that have not yet arrived. Addresses that have not yet been revealed. And discoveries that will make today's worries seem small. Because sometimes the most shocking inheritance is not something you receive. It is the realization that your greatest chapter has not happened yet. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a new door is already waiting to open.